CD Projekt Red has a very ambitious future, even after Cyberpunk 2077 did not live up to the hype and the 30 million units it was expected to sell. The 13 million in 21 days was still super impressive, but they only managed to sell 5 million in the 16 months after that. Still, 18 million is a big number, with many, including myself, interested in an expansion that we now learned a bit more about. Although more exciting is a new Witcher title that was also announced, and that will be the next big RPG from the Polish developer. We just got a ton of new info about the future of cdpr that I want to run down in this video. Of course, if you are excited for a new Witcher game, then don't leave a like on the video to show your support. And let's go. You could argue that February 2022 was the real launch of Cyberpunk 2077, with the massive 1.5 patch that did not only include a proper next-gen version of the game with a ray tracing option and PS5 DualSense support, and it also brought new features like the ability to rent 4 new apartments in different parts of Night City, all with their own style. I think they look pretty cool, and by looking in the mirror at one of these apartments, we can now finally customize our look again. This was long overdue. If you already played since the update, then you noticed that you will have to respend your perk points, as they made a lot of balancing changes for certain perks. We got 2 brand new weapons, some new attachments, and they also extended romances with more messages and interactions for many of the characters. Including the fact that if you sleep in their apartment now, you will wake up next to them, as we see in footage here from Eye of Center, which is totally a nice touch. So this next to a massive list of fixes, as you see right here. Again, it feels like the game is in a way more acceptable state now, so we might actually finally see some free content. Around the launch of the game, there were a couple of cut gigs that Swentra on YouTube was already able to try, so maybe they will properly complete them and then release them as free content, similar to how The Witcher 3 got free contracts after launch as well. And it's interesting, Renato on Reddit noticed a DLC 4 gig step bookmark during a stream from quest designer Paweł Sasko, implying that we will indeed get some free gigs till the big paid expansion arrives in 2023. With more details coming later this year. And as we can see in this very interesting slide from their recent financial call, it seems that as of February 2022, around half of the developers are working on the Cyberpunk expansion, looking at the big blue bar. And that amount is also increasing every 6 months, with the general support for the game becoming smaller each time, looking at the yellow bar. So while The Witcher 3 got 2 big paid expansions with Hearts of Stone already dropping 5 months after The Witcher 3 came out, which is pretty wild, it seems that Cyberpunk will only get 1 DLC launching more than 2 years after the game released. So I'm not sure if it's still true that Cyberpunk 2077 players can expect more DLC than The Witcher 3, something that CD Projekt Red shared before launch. Now, I still think that the Crystal Palace, a space station casino, would be an amazing location for the DLC, and it would also make sense looking at some of the endings, and we got some concept art already. But we will find out more details again later this year. Although I think we will have to wait longer for Witcher 4 info. Maybe you already saw the announcement on Twitter with a link to the official website where you can insert your birthday to access an article with the very first details. I want to start with the image. For one, it says a new saga begins, and it shows a Witcher medallion from an unknown school, although it was later confirmed by multiple developers that the animal portrayed on the medallion is indeed a lynx. And this is interesting because for as far as we know, neither the books or the games make a mention of a school of lynx. So it seems that this will be a sequel where a new Witcher school will be opened. And the only mention of the school of lynx comes from a documented fan fiction where Lambert, one of Geralt's fellow Witcher friends, and Kira, a sorceress we meet during the first act of Witcher 3, would begin this school. Something that would also tie it to the events of The Witcher 3 without having Geralt directly involved. I would be shocked if he's not in this next game, but I also doubt that we will play as him again. Now again, this was just fan fiction. It could totally be different in the final product, but it's still interesting that fans already had some ideas about a school that now seems to play a big role in The Witcher 4, or I say The Witcher 4, but the name was not officially announced yet, as global PR director Radek noted on Twitter. What we do know for sure is that it will be made on Unreal Engine 5, as this new iteration of the engine has a lot of open world support. They mentioned the medieval environment demo that really caught their eye, as there was also a notice board which said Monster Hunter wanted. Coincidence? Maybe not. And overall it of course looks very beautiful and in the style of what a new Witcher game could be. The fact that a ton of development studios around the world are using Unreal Engine makes the tool very agile according to CDPR, and a very cool feature they mention is that it can very easily make environments that immediately look stunning, which will of course help with the overall development. Another reason why they're switching to Unreal Engine 5 is multiplayer. They always wanted to make a Cyberpunk multiplayer spin-off, but that was cancelled, likely because of the poor launch. But they also did not have the right technology for big multiplayer projects. Right now though, they say that their in-house multiplayer development has ended because thanks to Unreal Engine 5, CDPR now has access to ready-made advanced multiplayer technology. I don't think we should worry, they will totally focus on single-player games, but a separate multiplayer component like Ghost of Tsushima Legends, for example, which was a really cool co-op mode, something like that would of course be awesome, or a Witcher Monster Hunter style game with multiple Witchers hunting mythical beasts. I can see it happen, and thanks to Unreal Engine 5, it should be easier to realize that. So good to note is that while the Cyberpunk 2077 expansion is still being made on their own Red engine, they are now starting a multi-year partnership with Epic Games, meaning that the Unreal Engine will be used in upcoming titles, so maybe also in future Cyberpunk projects. Now luckily this doesn't mean that the new Witcher game will be an Epic Store exclusive, at least right now they're not planning on making the game exclusive to one storefront, which of course good news. But yeah, apart from that, a lot of questions like will Witcher 3 choices have an impact on this new title? I don't think it will be directly linked, but we would be able to find out what the canon choices turn out to be, right, for Ciri, the multiple countries. And Dennis, you had a theory about someone who might return, right?
I mean, I hope he does. I think that his story is a pretty big unresolved plot point from The Witcher 3 actually. I am of course talking about Gaunter O'Dim, who you briefly meet during the main game's intro, but who then plays a huge role in the first DLC, Hearts of Stone. Now no matter what ending you pick for that DLC, Gaunter will make some mention of seeing you again, either stating that if he ever has trouble collecting a debt, he will turn to a Witcher, or saying that he can't be killed and he will be back. Now this might of course just be a line to add to the character's mystery, but I'd like to think that it's actually something more. Even though we never find out his true nature, it is heavily implied that he is either God or the devil, and we do know for sure that he loves making deals with people in trade for their souls. So not only is he a very dangerous villain, he is also one that works very well in a Witcher story, which is why I think we will actually see him again.
I think that would be cool for sure, and we see a growing part of CDPR work on this so-called other projects, including new game in the Witcher IP section. When the Cyberpunk DLC is finished, I would imagine that most people will join the Witcher team. The red bar to the right might also be Witcher related. CD Projekt Red is expanding with a Vancouver studio, and they also bought the Molasses Flood. The studio made 2 survival games, including Drake Hollow from August 2020, so they're now working on an unannounced project based on one of CDPR's franchises. And going back to the Drake Hollow gameplay, I think it already kinda looks like The Witcher in terms of fantasy setting, some sword combat. I could see them make a Witcher survival game spin-off, which could be pretty awesome. So the green bar is for Gwent related projects, and we know they actually have a big new single player Gwent game which should be out this year, something you can also play without having touched the regular PvP Gwent, by the way. And we also got Spacco, their mobile game initiative with the Witcher Monster Slayer Pokemon Go style game, for example, that I never heard anyone talk about, but I guess it's still being supported. Now you cannot talk about CDPR without talking about the elephant in the room. Did they learn from Cyberpunk? I for one really hope they shy away from amazing looking E3 demos that are all fake, or that they won't be making big promises again, or talk about features that will not be in the final game. I think the best way forward would be for them to be quiet and then properly unveil The Witcher 4 when it's like very close to coming out. You would at least think that with it being on Unreal Engine 5, that it should properly scale to consoles and not be unplayable like Cyberpunk on PS4 and Xbox One. Let's hope they give the developers all the time they need and not overpromise things, and that we get a good Witcher game, because looking at this Unreal Engine 5 footage already makes me really excited for the possibilities. It will be interesting to follow when we know more about the Cyberpunk DLC or new Witcher game. I will tell it here, so totally subscribe to not miss anything. A like on the video would of course really help me out, and check out my previous video by clicking on the screen on big games that are still coming out in 2022. For now though, I will speak to you soon. Goodbye.